Hello, aspirants. Today we will cover one of the topics from the current affairs. Before starting to cover that topic, I would like to illustrate a story, or I would like to tell a story. The story is about the boy named Thinless. Thinless was living in Ladakh in India. As you know, Ladakh is a sparsely populated area, and there are very few number of people living in the Ladakh. And due to this, the Thinless have a fewer friends to play with. He was a 12-year-old and he was growing, but he was not finding enough number of friends to play with. He always wished that Ladakh should be populated with many people so that he could find other children to play with. And one night when he was sleeping, he got a dream, and in his dream, his wish came true, and Ladakh was populated highly with people, and there were so many people in the Ladakh. There were so many children in the Ladakh, and the Hilles was started to enjoying, but later he find it difficult to play because the playground was lesser. The area for the playing was less. The ball was limited in the Ladakh to play with. Hence, it the wish of a Thinless became a nightmare. And this story partly reflects the today's topic also. And today's topic is, if you have heard the news that India have recently surpassed the population of China. In a recent report, if you have gone through UN population, that India has surpassed the China as most populated country in the world. Currently, China and India both hold around 1.3 billion population. What does this mean about holding a 1.3 billion population? If you know that this same UN population have given a one number more, that is world population estimated to reach 8 billion by 15th November. And if you calculate in terms of percentage, this 1.3 billion is around 16%. So alone, India contains the 60% of the world population. And this, in combination with China, this goes up to the 32%. So you can imagine that the whole world, if constitute the 100% of the resources, and these resources are meant for 100% population. But now these resources will be needed for 32% of the population living in India and China for itself. As a citizen, we generally take a proud when we India become number one in something. But in terms of population, it is not seen as a proud movement for India. It is seen as a threat to India. It is seen as a potential danger to the India. Why it is that, and what are what can be the implications of a rising population for India, for the world? We will look into this analysis. Before moving to analysis, let's take look into the few statistics. If you know, around 1.821 billion was the population in 2011, and the recent census, which was meant to happen in 2021, was got deferred due to the COVID. As you know, the in every 10 years, census happen, and this is conducted by Registrar General of Population. And the population is generally measured in terms of a fertility rate. This fertility rate generally gives an idea about growth rate of a population. And if you know that globally the fertility rate has declined to 2.1% per woman by 2050, and it is estimated that it will further decline. What this increase in population is meant for India. Generally, we as a aspirant look into the aspect of every issues in several categories, and one of those categories is a geographical aspect. If you see in geography, we study the population, we study the resources, we study the demography, which is a part of a population itself, and lastly, we study in terms of a interrelation with the economy. So as you know, the population has surpassed China, so India has become number one populated country in the world. Sometimes this large population is touted as a demographic dividend by many scholars, by many researchers, that India has a vast number of people in this population in the age of 18 to 60 years. That is a largely a working population. But this theory of demographic dividend generally falls apart when we talk about the capability of this working population. This working population is low in skill, low in education, low in health. And if we see in a broader terms, it will appear that this demographic dividend is a more of a burden than an advantage. How government is working on this, we will talk into later part of the lecture. But this is one of the issues. Now, if you see the consider if there is 100 people and there is 100 apples, then 100 apples can be divided equally into 100 people. But if you know that resources of Earth is continuously depleting, and mostly the renewable energies are there, but the non-renewable energies are fastly depleting, especially the fossil fuels. If we take the analogy from there, the apples have remained 90 now, and the number of people likely to eat this apple have increased because of increased population, and it has reached to the 120. Hence, the each person capacity, what rather than capacity, we can say the availability of resources for each person has reduced vastly, and this we can say in terms of a renewable energy, we can say in the terms of employment, this we can say in the terms of living into the houses, and there are so many resources we are using currently, and availability of these resources have fastly depleted for them. Due to this, we face problem called inflation, because the demand is there, and as you know that India is greatly seen as a fastest growing market. Demand is there, but the supply of the resources, supply of a good and services is not there. And due to this mismatch in demand and supply, prices is bound to increase. And in a similar contribution to demography, especially the older one, if you see the NPS or the pension system are not well consolidated in India, and the people savings tendencies have been decreased as per the recent economic surveys also tell us, the pension burden will increase, and this ultimately will lead to vast public expenditure on day-to-day activities. If we go into the further aspects, societal perspective, what this increase in the population of India mean in societal terms? If we see this increase in the population in societal terms, you will see that in society, mainly the family, those social arrangement, the migration, globalization will be affected from the increased population. If you see in the family, there is a rise of a nuclear family. Earlier, we were having a joint family, and due to this joint family, there was collective ownership of the resources. But due to this rising trend of a nuclear family, हम दो हमारे दो, the ownership of the resources has divided, and the resources are not enough for those families, and the competition for those resources has increased. What in, if you talk in the societal arrangement, there is a increased tendency where the families are not able to survive in a low income group or the lower middle income group, and they reach to the stage of a migration where the families from the Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and other low income states are moving to the higher income states, and these leads to inequalities in the society, rising crimes, and this the impact of this migration, the impact of this rising population have especially affected the women, because the competition for the rights has again have increased, where the each group, the male and female, are fighting for their rights of right to job, right to employment, right to have ownership of the resources. And this fight ultimately reflects on a global level, because as you see, the resources are limited, the share of the population have increased greatly. Then again, we talk about an economic perspective of the rising population. We can simply go with the division of resources, employment, per capita income, and inequality. As I have already told you that the resources are limited and the population have increased, the division of resources becomes smaller. As you know, the ownership of a land has decreased for the farmers to around 0.8 hectare. And in that area of land doesn't produce enough to feed that farmer. And these farmers are forced to give up on the agriculture and move to the other part of the occupation like manufacturing and the service, where they are not well skilled, hence restricted to the lower end of the job. But despite the shifting to the other sectors of the job, you don't have the enough job because there is already a competition for jobs from educated, skilled, and healthy population. And this fight for the employment have forced the people to took up the jobs in lower income, and they generally go for a lower salary to ensure that they have a job, they have a income to feed their family, and it result into lower per capita income for population, and it ultimately result in inequality where the billionaires, millionaires have a larger share of the population and the smaller share of population like farmer, day workers have a lesser resources to exploit on. When we say the exploitation of resources, there is an ethical perspective also. And this ethical perspective generally guides the usage of resources for future. Because as we as you know, there is a large advocacy for the sustainable uses of resources, using the resources so that it will serve the needs of present while preserving the needs of a future. And hence it generally becomes a ethical dilemma where we have to deal with the development versus sus- sustainable development, or we can say faster development versus sustainable development. Because if we are not fast enough, there will be larger population under the poverty, and if we are increasing the pace of the growth, then the sources will be decreased. Hence, there will be a ethical dilemma to how to balance out both the pace of the development while ensuring the sustainable use of the resources. Hence, the final conclusion comes to us. Uh, what should be the solution? Before looking into the solution, we should look into the what government is doing. In terms of population, you already know we have a national population policy which advocate for the controlling the population growth in a sustainable manner, unlike China, which have adopted the policy of one child only. Then, apart from that, we have a several skills program like National Skill Mission, Pradhan Mantri Gram Kaushal Yojana, and other pop schemes are there to facilitate the skills. Then we have a Ayush program to cater the health. But these are not enough. Hence, what should be the done? What should be done? Let's see you become a collector of a state in a Uttar Pradesh, and it has been asked to suggest you come up with a solution to prevent the population growth, to restrict the population growth. What are the two solutions you can give? If you say in terms of a general parlance, we will say that people should be educated more so that they have a better rational thinking about having more children, so that they can decide how many children are best for them, best for the community, so that they can decide on their own. It should be bottom up approach we have to focus. And the second solution we generally provide as a civil servant or as an aspirant is that we should capture the demographic dividend, for which we are already working in, and we have to increase efficiency of those programs. But as a teacher, I would like to ask you, what should be done by the government to restrict population growth? Write your answers in the comments. I hope my explanations about rising population have educated you about the issue, and we hope to see you in the next topic.